everyone, and welcome back to Fear the Final Girl, a Van Ryder Games podcast. I am your host, Jamie, and joining me yet again, we have Evan. Hello, Evan.
Hello, Jamie.
How's it going?
It's going great.
Awesome. The answer I got from Evan before was, so that was much better. And we also have a very special guest with us today. Of course, you could see on the screen if you're watching, David Thompson. David has 49 design credits, including big hits like one of my personal favorites, Undaunted, Sniper Elite, the board game War Chest, and so many more. Welcome, David.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think 49 is probably wrong. That's like the BGG number, which is like inflated.
Every expansion.
Hey, I'll take it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I like how you've strategically set up Final Girl in the background to garner approval.
I know, right?
With me.
With me.
Yeah, my daughter and I just finished playing Falconwood.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. How did that go?
When I play with my daughter, we always win.
Nice.
Somehow magically.
Lucky
right?
charm. Yeah.
Just somehow works that way. No, it was awesome. It was our first time playing it, so it was super cool. I love the way that the missions work, right? Mm-hmm. With like searching for, like we were playing where you're searching for your friend. That was a really cool little elegant mechanic. So we got a kick out of that. And I asked her how she liked it, and she liked that a lot too at the end. That was the standout for her. So
I love it.
It was nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the missions personally as well. So I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it.
Yep.
Yeah, David, maybe tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, do all that good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So like you said, David Thompson. I won't get into like too much detail because we'll probably talk about some of it later on. So I'll just like highlights. Currently designing board games, but I did not grow up on board games. I grew up on RPGs, right? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I got into my 30s, and I was like, hey, because I was always the DM, so I was spending like way too much time making adventures and stuff. And I had gotten married and had kids, and I was like, I need a hobby where I'm investing less time. So I'm going to switch to board games. And holy cow, that was a bad decision. I don't know what happened. So I switched over, and like after I started playing board games, I almost immediately started trying to design. And that's about the time I moved to the UK and fell in with a group in Cambridge. And so started going to Essen and pitching games and stuff. And so I not long after I got into the hobby, started designing.
Wow. That's interesting because, like, there's so many people that we've chatted with, including Evan, who it's like, I've been playing board games since I was a little kid. Like, this has been, like, a huge part of my life. So it's cool that you kind of, like, got into it through RPGs because we haven't heard that as much.
Yeah, it was interesting. I started playing RPGs to include mostly D&D, other stuff, mm-hmm. too, as early as, like, maybe 11 or so.
Nice.
And I mean, there were times where, like, you know, maybe I was in my, like, about around 20 or so, and mm-hmm. I remember going into stores to, like, buy RPGs, and I might see something like a Twilight Imperium or something in the mm-hmm. store and think, like, that looks really cool. I have no idea what that is. And I played, like, a few things, right? Like, so I played, like, Blood Bowl, something mm-hmm. that was popular enough to kind of be outside of the board game hobby, too. But very, very few things. Very few.
That's awesome. Well, today's episode, we'll be chatting with David about game design, everything from designing for solo play, war games, co-designing, and more. I'm really excited. I love David, as does Evan, so we're just really excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. It's awesome to be here with both of y'all.
Yeah.
So we like to talk about some of the things we've been consuming lately, not just food, but movies, comics, books, games, whatever it is. So, mm-hmm. What has been on your plate lately, David?
Yeah. So, I used to not really watch much of anything, TVs, movies, whatever. Only like occasionally with my family. But I also used to jog, and I hurt my back. And so for like the last year, all I've done is the elliptical. So I spend a lot of time in the mornings on the elliptical watching TV now. And so I had been rewatching all of Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But then I started watching the new Daredevil show, which I thought was okay. I'm not a huge, like, I've kind of gotten out of MCU. Like, I've got, like a lot of people, I've burned out. But I watched Daredevil, which I thought was pretty good. But there was the Kingpin storyline in Daredevil was kind of confusing to me because clearly stuff had happened with Kingpin that I had no idea what was going on. And so that I was like, I'm going to go back and watch Echo, right? Because I vaguely knew that, like, Echo was in Hawkeye, but I never watched Echo. And I've really, really enjoyed Echo. Like, I didn't have any real expectations. I did not know that Echo was, she was Native American, right? I had no idea, like, what her background was, because I don't really know that they explored that at all in Hawkeye. And honestly, I didn't really care for Hawkeye that much. So I've been really into Echo, and it's been an interesting, like, I thought it's been really well done. A lot of the cast are from shows that I love, like Dark Winds and Reservation Dogs. And so it's been really cool to see, like, and I even watched this morning, I watched the Marvel Assembled, or whatever it's called, like the documentary about filming the show, and to see like how much effort they put into working with, like, the cast and the crew all learned ASL so they could speak with the actress, the main actress. And how much, like, effort they had put in working with the Choctaw community to have, like, a very real, like a very real feeling show. So I thought and a lot of it's filmed on location. So it to me, it was like a very refreshing look at the MCU. So I've been enjoying that a lot lately.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like we have a lot of overlap right now. Because I'm going through my annual rewatch of all the Marvel, which has become quite cumbersome over the years.
Yeah.
Wait,
and
I'm sorry, your annual rewatch of all the Marvel, including all of the TV shows?
Only the TV shows that are canon. So if they are relevant to the greater story, then yes.
They're all canon, except for like the what if stuff.
What if is included, and I'm doing chronological timeline.
Whoa.
And I'm currently on Daredevil season 1. So it's interesting that you're watching the new Daredevil, because I said this to Jeff last night. I just don't like Kingpin as a villain. Like, I don't think I care about, like, a mob boss style villain. I want someone cool. Like, give me a, like, Doc Ock or somebody with, like, weird abilities that I enjoy. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like, I'm meh on Daredevil, I have to say.
Yeah.
You don't like seeing Vincent D'Onofrio go, Vanessa, every 20 seconds?
No, I think I'm good on that,
Oh, by canon, you mean you're not watching the other canceled Netflix shows?
Well, Jessica Jones is part of it, and Luke Cage, and all of that is now part of it because Daredevil will be in Doomsday, and he's coming back in, like, some of the future films. And so now Daredevil is part of it, where in my previous rewatches it wasn't. So I have to go through, I have to watch Luke Cage, which is gonna suck. I have to watch
you don't have to.
I do, Evan.
You don't have to.
I must.
You don't have to watch. Are you gonna watch Iron Fist?
Yeah, it's part of it.
Oh wow, that's just. Oof.
This is the life. This is the life I've chosen
This
to
is
live. This is my life
the
now.
life
I
you've
don't know.
chosen.
I just, speaking of overlap, I just finished Daredevil, and the Born Again, and I was actually really excited because I thought it was going to be based on the comic run Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller. Nope, not at all, not even close. Zero similarities, because in the comic, they basically, Kingpin takes everything from Daredevil. He takes his job, he basically turns him into a criminal. He tries to kill him. He actually does kind of kill him. I mean, he breaks him down completely, and then he has to kind of rebuild himself and come back. I was expecting that. It was fine. It was fine.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Speaking of running injuries. I also injured my back really badly last year running. And I had a displaced disc and couldn't walk for like 6 months.
That's true.
So
Yeah, I
will never ever run again.
Yep.
Smart.
So same for me. So I mean, part of this is just getting old, but I was at a point where it hurt to stand and it hurt to lay down and it hurt to sit. And at that point, I basically spent an insane amount of time with a chiropractor and a physical therapist, and I'm finally at the point now where. Like you, I'll never run again. The good thing is that my knees don't hurt anymore, so maybe I should have stopped running earlier.
Yeah, running's bad. I don't know why.
Great.
Listen, I'm not going to start it, so I'm never going to have that kind of injury. Phew, which is great.
I mean, the marathon was named after a guy who, after running the 26 miles, dropped dead.
Yeah, checks out.
I don't want that. That's not the life for me. I did want to mention I did just go to Canada Plays, where I got to see my best friend ever, Byron, part of the Van Ryder Games team, of course, and Ryan. And that was very exciting. I got to see Bad Times in Buddyland in person. It was beautiful. We'll talk about that later, though. All right, so let's talk about our word of the month. Now, we do this every month. We pick a word and we talk about it, something that people may not know about within the board game space. And I thought this word was kind of relevant, and that's hidden movement. I know you two both enjoy hidden movement games. So for those that don't know, hidden movement board, I know it is. Hidden movement board games are a type of strategy game where at least one player will move in secret while other players try to track them down or avoid them, kind of like a cat and mouse situation. It could be a one versus many. Maybe you're trying to find a secret location. There's often limited information, some deduction. And what makes these games so fun is they offer that like tension and suspense that you maybe don't always find in board games. And I would love to ask both David and Evan, are there any games with hidden movement that you enjoy? And yes, if you like, you may answer with your own game. Just throwing it out there.
Evan, do you want to go first? Or?
Sure. I haven't really designed a. I have lots of ideas for hidden movement games, but I haven't actually designed a straight hidden movement game yet. But my favorite. I've pretty much, other than maybe any that have come out in the last few years, I've played every single one. At one point, I owned them all, and it was like a weird point of pride that I like owned every hidden movement game that had been published until I realized that I was never ever going to play Garibaldi ever again or whatever, some of these more obscure ones. So I got rid of them. But for me, my favorite, it still holds the crown, is Letters from Whitechapel. I just don't think there's a better hidden movement game than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about hidden movement is there's just not that many of them, right? Like you can actually go out and buy them all because there's not that many, which is
right.
It's a bit surprising because I mean, they're obviously not for everybody, but it seems like there would be more of them, right? For me, I mean, I agree. Letters from Whitechapel, Scotland Yard, like those are classics. I will say, what I'm not a huge fan of is the ones that are a little bit more like longer. I'm just not a huge fan of super long games anyway. So like Fury of Dracula, which I've played a couple of times, I didn't love as much. The one that's
a lot of Chrome.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge super huge Chrome guy, but Spectre Ops stands out to me. It probably was the biggest influence on Sniper Elite, right? Which is the hidden movement game that I've worked on. I haven't played it in many years. So I should mention Spectre Ops came out in 2015, published by Plaid Hat, designed by Emerson Matsushi. Awesome game, fantastic game, and like I said, a big inspiration. I haven't played it in many years. I don't own it. So it would be great to kind of take it back out and see how it's held up. But no, it's a great game.
Yeah, I've got so many. Like, we really enjoy Beast, which is a newer one that came out maybe a year or two ago. But I also I love Mind Management for a hidden movement game, because the whole system and like how you can just you could play like the base game and just do a hidden movement game, or you can like kind of go through all of the scenarios and levels of it. I thought it was really clever, and it's cool that it's based off of like a graphic novel series. So
I think one of the reasons why there aren't more is it's incredibly difficult to design a game like that with asymmetric sides where you make playing the hunters or whoever's hunting fun. I think that's typically a common complaint. Is that the detectives or the people, there's just not a lot for them to do.
right.
And some people, I personally really like playing the hidden character, but some people find that incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
And so you've got a game where one thing everybody wants to play, but then some people find it really stressful, and then the other side, it's usually easily dominated by like alpha players who will just tell everybody what to do. So it's a really challenging genre or mechanism to design for well and not fall into a lot of the same pitfalls.
Yeah, and the other sort of challenge or con I would add to that is if somebody if the hidden player messes up, right, somehow, if they make a mistake, then the whole game can fall apart.
Yeah.
And there's really no way to know, and we're not talking like cheating or anything. We're talking like genuinely like, oh, I made a mistake and that messed up something that happened 3 turns ago, and everything is, so.
Each month we like to feature a game. And because this is a Van Ryder Games podcast, we like to feature games that we publish. And this month's game that we are featuring is a new feature film expansion for Final Girl called Bad Times at Buddyland, which features Buddyland, the rundown, pizza-fueled arcade with like lots of arcade games and stuff that has been overrun by horribly, demon-possessed or whatever animatronic figures who are out to kill you. So it's Buddy the bear, and his minions, of which he has many, including Billy. It's not Buddy. I always get that messed up.
It's Buddyland.
You know what? I talked to AJ about that. I was just like, we call it Buddyland, but it's Billy the bear.
Yeah.
I've made that point. Well, it's Billy. AJ will listen to this right now. He'll just be like, it's not that hard, Evan, to remember that it's Billy. Anyway, it's Billy the bear. One of the new mechanisms in Bad Times at Buddyland is that Billy and his minions are powered by electricity. And so there are all these little power cells around the board. And you have to run and try to shut them off to hamper Billy and their movement. But they also, of course, like to go and turn them back on. So it's this kind of like push and pull. And one of the other little things I think is really cool is there are, for the items, there are coins. You can get tokens. And they all do different things. So there's like skee ball tokens you can put in the skee ball machine. There's arcade tokens you can put in the arcades. There's claw. There's like crane game tokens you can put in. And each time you put in the token, you get something different. Like if you put in the skee balls, you get a bunch of skee balls that then are projectile weapons you get to throw at people. So it's a very cool 80s, like neon-fueled, fevered nightmare dream. Yeah. So, Bad Times at Buddyland. And it is... So, we just ran a special pre-order for it. A pre-tariff pre-order. And we're shipping out 2,000 copies that will be getting into the people who order it. So people will have it within the next week or two. But then we're rolling it out to doing a normal rollout to retailers and all this other kind of stuff just a little bit later. So
Awesome.
I missed the pre-order. I saw it this morning. I went and looked at it, and so that's all I know about is what was on the pre-order page. But I love the idea of using the tokens for skee ball and the claw machine. That's so cool. That's gonna be one of our favorites already. I mean, the theme is so important, but okay. Yeah.
The minions are super cool. There's 7 of them. And unfortunately, we weren't able to ship the miniature packs, but this feature film comes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 11 miniatures.
Yeah.
So it's the most we've ever done for a single feature film.
And they're all so cool. Like, they look so cool.
Yeah. I don't want to tangent too much, but will you all indulge me with a question about the production costs on, like, because last episode y'all were talking about you have a bunch of like art, like the art budget was like kind of high for the feature film you were discussing. And so, I mean, when you plan the costs of each feature film, do you just kind of consider it a cost across the whole season and you just average it out, or does each feature film have its own budget? Or can you discuss?
Yeah, we try to. I mean, we've discussed individual budgets for each film, so we kind of have a set budget for each film. Like, it should cost about this much, including for both the miniatures and the art. Buddyland, and I remember when it was discussing, and someone suggested, like, oh, let's make miniatures for all the buddies, and or all the minions, and I was like, you know that will blow the budget out of the water, right? But Final Girl, fortunately, is a popular enough product that it can justify. Yeah. It's not like we're doing a brand new game, like totally blowing our budget, and who knows if people will even want it. It's a product that people are going to enjoy, so we're willing to stretch more on the budget with Final Girl products.
Okay, one more question then. Do you within a season, do you actually have like sizable differences in how the different feature films sell, or do they all roughly sell like pretty similarly?
So it's hard to know with the newer ones. Like, for example, we don't really have good data on Series 3 yet because it's just gotten to backers and it's just out. But we do have good data on, like, say, Series 1 and 2.
And I'm sure Happy Trails is like the number one seller, of course, right? But
Happy Trails is a big one, and Frightmare on Maple Lane is a big one.
Okay.
A lot of it has to do with just like fan response. Like, a lot of people will ask. You'll see this in the Facebook groups all the time. People are like, "Which one should I get?" And there's a lot of very, a lot of the answers are the same. Like, start with Hans, or you try Frightmare, or do one of these, and then they'll say, "Hey, this one's really complicated or not complicated." We do have a couple that don't sell as well, in part because they're really polarizing, difficult. Inkanyamba from Series 1 doesn't sell really well. One, because it's not much of it was an attempt to kind of make something very original, and so it doesn't really reference or homage any kind of existing horror tropes or anything. So there's less for people to identify with, and it is brutally difficult. So those two things kind of in combination mean that it sells less, but for the most part, they all mostly sell pretty similar. So
cool. Okay.
Awesome. So I say we dive into our main topic, and like I mentioned before, we're talking about game design. We're talking about game design with David, and I've got lots of questions, and David has been prepared, so he's ready for all my questions. And obviously, Evan, feel free to dive in whenever you like. But you kind of answered a little bit of this first one already, but maybe just to kind of like start us off, can you tell us about how you got into game design and what drew you to it in the first place?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I had mentioned this before. Like, I was always into D&D. I was always the DM, so I was always doing the design work. And I was that kind of DM that like would make ridiculous campaign settings and essentially modules that no one would ever see. Like, no one would ever read any of the material or any of that stuff, and I would still spend way too much time making it. And I did do, and I mentioned this before. Like, I did play games like Blood Bowl. I played. Do you all know Mage Knight, the Clicks game? Not the board game, but there was Hero Clicks, right? Have you ever heard of Hero Clicks?
I haven't.
Okay, so they're it doesn't really matter. They're this miniature skirmish game that like dates back to like the late 90s, early 2000s. And before Mage Knight was a board game, it was these like little skirmishy fighty guys with a base. But the point is, like, they were another example of a product that was so popular it went outside of the board game hobby, right? And to like the broader tabletop hobby. And so between like those influences, I was actually working on a game that now we would think of as like a hybrid board game miniature skirmish game in the early 2000s that I had no idea what to do with, right? I was like, I don't know how to make this or whatever. And so when I started getting into board games, like I told you about, and the reason I got into board games specifically from RPGs was the Secret Cabal podcast, because when they first started, they talked about RPGs. And so I was listening to them for their RPG content. They also talked about board games, and they were talking about Ameritrash games, which appealed to me. And so that's how I discovered the board game hobby. And it's like the game I was working on was very much an Ameritrash style game. I just didn't really understand those terms. And so that's really kind of, that all happened at the same time, right? Like I like discovered the hobby, and I started working on that game in that broader board game context. And so, like I said, then I moved to the UK, and I fell in with a design group in Cambridge, and really that's that group. So it was a design and playtest group in Cambridge. If I had not met them, like, I would not be designing board games.
Right.
So it was people like Brett Gilbert and Matt Dunstan, who are well-known designers, where they were the ones who created that chapter of Playtest UK. And I mean, within 2 or 3 months of me moving there, I was going with them to Spiel. I was meeting with publishers and that kind of stuff. And in that first trip to Essen is when I pitched Undaunted. So, like, you know, I'd only been working on it for a couple of months, and I took it with me. So things happened really, really fast. That was 2014. So really, that's when everything, you know, started. But that key moment of meeting those folks is what like enabled that to happen, really.
Just kind of sounds like a perfect situation that you met that group and everything kind of came together, and that's nice. I like that.
Yeah, everything was sort of fortuitous in how it aligned. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've created a wide range of games. How would you describe your design philosophy?
Yeah, I think, you know, when you look at games that I've had that have been published, right? So not things that never came to be, but things that were published. If you look at it, probably it's easy to see that, like, early on, some of my stuff was different than what I work on now. And I was definitely kind of like trying to figure out the answer to your question. Like, I didn't have a philosophy. I was just kind of throwing around stuff with, you know, sometimes with other people, sometimes by myself, see what sticks. But now, I think everybody evolves, and, you know, there's an organic sort of process to how you, as a designer, work. And so for me now, it's very different. It's a very deliberate process. Regardless of what I'm working on. Now, this approach very much came out of my, like, how I designed historical games, but now I apply it to everything I work on. And so that is, I take whatever the topic is, and I go through this very deliberate, like, I research the topic for a while, usually about 6 months, and then I do this deconstruction technique where you like deconstruct a topic, you turn it into a model, and then I turn that model into the game. And that process is something that I took from my day job, and literally, like, the exact process I use at work, I will use it for game design. And so, like, right now I'm working on a video game adaptation, kind of like I did with Sniper Elite. And so I just finished playing the video game. Like, and I'm not a huge video gamer, so it's unusual for me. But I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to design a game about this video game, I have to play the video game. I have to really understand it. I have to deconstruct, like, the core principles of the video game so that I can design the game around it.
Do you generally pick, like, a theme, a topic? Like, you've designed a lot of games that are based on history. So, like, do you think of, like, like Night Witches? Did you think this would be really cool to design a game around this theme? Or do you start with the mechanic and then go to theme? Or does it kind of switch up? Yeah,
so there's an exception. If I'm working on a game with other people and they come to me with an idea, then that might be a different case.
Right.
And there's a couple of times, like, I have a game that was just announced with Mighty Boards called Aegea that I worked on with Brett Gilbert and Trevor Benjamin, my main design partner, which was born out of a crazy process, but it wasn't like an idea, like a thematic idea that went through my normal, you know, process. If it's something that I'm primarily involved with from the start, then it's definitely like a topic that I'm passionate about. Right. So some crazy, and oftentimes if it's like a historical thing, it's usually kind of an obscure topic that I'll get passionate about. But really, the way I know that I have to make a game about it is like, oh, that's a cool idea. And if I can't stop thinking about it, then I'll have to make a game about it. right?
Right.
If it's something I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea, and then like 2 weeks later I'm not thinking about it anymore, then I know that that's fine. It doesn't need to exist as a game.
Right. How often would you say it's coming from your own like idea versus somebody bringing something to you?
The vast majority of what I work on, I'll usually be the one that inspires it. That's not always the case. So like with Night Witches, and then the other game that Liz and I are working on, Queen of Spies, both of those, she and I will always like, we'll throw an idea to the other one, and it has to be like something that we both get super passionate about.
Right.
And so we've got a long list of things that we've said, hey, what about this? But in every case, and we have a couple of things that we haven't announced yet that we're working on, but in every single case, it's like one of us presents the idea and the other one's immediately like, oh yeah, we have to do a game about that topic.
Yeah. That's cool. And generally speaking, like, because, you've done quite a few, like, war-themed base games. Like, is that just a theme that speaks to you more than, something like a fantasy-style game or sci-fi? I know, like, your new one you're just talking about is Greek Gods, which is a little bit maybe different. So is it generally, like, that war theme that you're most passionate about?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Again, all at the same time, when I moved to the UK, I had not really been into, I'd been in the Air Force and all of that, but I'd never really been into military history. And then when I moved to the UK, the first family vacation we took was to Normandy. And, I think I've told you this before, Undaunted Normandy is about my grandfather's unit.
Yes.
And he, they started in Normandy. And so, it was that trip that really got me into like military history, and especially World War II. And so that is something I'm definitely interested in. I will say, and I will continue to be interested in military history, and it's usually World War II or the French and Indian War. Like those are the two topics that I'm most interested in. But I will say, and you see this in Queen of Spies, I would also like to do like exploration of that topic that's less about conflict, right? Because there's a lot of other elements to military history that doesn't have to necessarily be direct conflict.
For sure.
So I'd like to explore that more in the future for sure, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And when designing a game, how do you know when something is done? Does it ever feel done or at least ready to move to the next stage? Like, what's that moment for you where you're like, okay, this is it?
Yeah, the cliche answer that people always say is a game is never done. I don't really aspire to that. I think it's when you go through quite a few play tests and you don't change anything, right? Like, this is not always the case. Depending on the publisher I work with and the player count in the game, I probably do more of my own development work than a lot of designers do.
Right.
So I will play test a game most of the time extensively with external playtesters, etc., and just grind and grind and grind. And so when I'm going through that process and I'm not changing anything, that's like, okay, it's ready. But usually not until that point.
Yeah. And you've designed a few like solo focus games, and Evan was going to understand how this feels, like obviously Final Girl and all that good stuff. What do you think makes a great solo game? Because I do think it's a different kind of skill set to design a game that works well for one person to enjoy on their own.
Yeah, I mean, so people are going to have different opinions about this, but for me, I think it's super important that a solo game, my daughter's going to have a different opinion on this, is super challenging, like really, really challenging, right? I don't want to win the game. Now, I have games like Resist, and I guess Witchcraft to a lesser extent, that I get a lot of negative reviews about because the people say it's too hard. That's fine, right? Like, everybody will have different opinions on level of difficulty. But I think it needs to be challenging, honestly. Like most gamers, I think, if they play a solo game the first time and they win, they're never going to play it again, right? Like I've beaten the game. And then I would say like low downtime for the AI. And honestly, like, and you see this with Night Witches and Queen of Spies, there's zero downtime. Like Liz and I were able to shift all of the resolution to your turn. Like it's your actions fail or succeed, and there is no AI really to upkeep. So for me personally, that's a huge positive. I don't want to spend a lot of time like the people who play coin solo, or the people who play like the crazy, it's super crazy, like all four factions just play through the Autonoma by themselves because it's possible. Like I can't do flowcharts, and I can't. That's just not my thing.
Yeah, I would say I'm 100% with you. Like if I win, I'm like, ew. I assume I've played it wrong, first of all, but like Jeff is totally different, maybe in the same way as your daughter, because I played Final Girl with him, and I was showing him, and Evan's heard this story, but he got all of the worst possible things that could happen in a game of Final Girl happen, and he lost so quickly, didn't even hit Hans once, and he's like, you find this fun? Like, this is fun for you? And I'm like, yes. Like, if I got this exact scenario and I got the crap beat out of me, I would be like, that was the best game I've ever had. Let's play again.
Let's play again. That's right.
Yeah. Super important.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I think, and we've noticed this with Final Girl, is that it's actually okay if it's easy to win, as long as it's entertaining. Mm-hmm. And so an enormous amount of solo games, most solo games, they function much more on like a puzzle, like a puzzle dynamic or a puzzle aspect, or like you've got about like a ton of different decisions, and you've got to try to thread the needle, and it's really tense and stuff like that. And Final Girl sometimes is just brutally, like, depending on how the cards come out, it's be like, there's actually no way you can win this. It will just kill you. And then there's other times where it's just like, oh, this is really easy. But so we've noticed that, like, there's an enormous, it's why we've mitigated some of the much more complex and difficult ones, because we found that our base actually just, they sometimes like the easier ones. So we try to mix up the difficulty level across a series, with some ones that are really simple and easy and other ones that are really difficult, because we'll notice how on some of the really difficult ones, like often some of the ones I design, people they'll get frustrated with it because they're like, this is too hard.
It is.
And then
too
some
hard.
other ones some other ones I've designed, like for example the one I did in space that's got the Conrad on it. Everybody loves the Conrad because it's actually one of the more easier boards, but because they get to do stuff like airlock the killer and like set the self-destruct, and it actually makes it easier, but they have such a good time doing it that they don't mind. Yeah. So that's although Final Girl exists in I think that it's probably a little bit safer when designing solo games to lean more towards what David's talking about, making it challenging.
Yeah, I think Final Girl is kind of an exception, right? I think it is, because people definitely are playing Final Girl for the theme, right? And the story that emerges, and so I think it exists in a kind of a special place, honestly.
And a lot of our negative reviews are for people who think it's just they don't have enough agency, and it's not. Yeah, it's too unfair, or it's just like, oh, the dice killed me, or it's just like, why do people like this? I had, I just got obliterated. I couldn't do anything, and I rolled bad. I was trying to walk, and I rolled bad and died. And I'm like, sounds like a great horror movie.
Yeah. I'd watch that. What are you talking about? That sounds amazing.
If you want to have total agency, just go play Mage Knight, and you'll be very happy.
Yep, exactly. So, David, if I'm not mistaken, in all of your designs, you've collaborated with at least one other designer. What do you think makes a co-design relationship work? And was that a deliberate choice, or it's just kind of the way it's played out for you?
So that is true now, basically. That wasn't true. So at the very beginning, at the very, very beginning, I was just kind of designing on my own because I had not met other people and etc. But like I said, effectively, as soon as I got to, like, for example, Undaunted was originally like a solo, like I was working on it by myself, right? And then Trevor joined me to help develop it and to do the scenario design. But essentially, once I met that group in Cambridge, I just started designing with other people, because it's very natural when you're in a design group like that, a playtest design group, to start collaborating, right? Because
for sure,
you fall into grooves where, like, well, we're all meeting up and we're all playtesting each other and we're all contributing, and you'll find this natural synergy with people, and you start collaborating. So I thought coming into that, like I started doing a lot of co-designs, and then I thought, okay, I'll do co-designs on everything except for my solo games, and I'll design my solo games by myself, right? And so I did that for a little while. So like the Valiant Defense games that I have, like Pavlov's House and stuff, they started out as solo designs. And then I started doing this thing where I would find gamers who were like experts in the military, the historical topic itself.
Right.
And so we're credited as co-designers, and sometimes that's a little bit misleading because they might have been like a historical expert that was also a gamer. And so they might not have been doing like what we would traditionally call co-design, but in my mind, that was like the best way to credit their significant contribution to the game. But now it's just, I mean, this is super cliche, but it's very true for me. Like, this is all about the people, and the most fun I have is working with people designing games. And so why would I do it by myself?
Right.
Right. So now it's just everything I do is co-designs. I can't imagine designing a game purely by myself at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, you've developed such good relationships with the people that you continuously like design with, and even like Liz is a relatively new design partner for you, but it seems like you guys just like hit it off, and it's like now we have another idea, and I think it's really cool to see kind of like that magic of like, oh, this is a good partner for me.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Liz and Trevor are two of my absolute best friends in the world, period.
Yeah.
Right? Independent of anything else, so, yeah.
Yeah.
And that came from designing, right? Designing together. Like, that's how that relationship really evolved, so.
For
yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
And how do you typically like divide responsibilities when it comes to co-designing? Is it mechanics or narrative or something more fluid? Depends on the game. How does that work?
It depends on the designer, the co-designer. So when I design with Trevor and Liz, and we haven't talked about him, I haven't mentioned his name yet, but Roger Tankersley, who I worked on with on Sniper Elite, and then some of the like the Resist and Witchcraft. It's me, Trevor, and Roger working together. When I work with those three, we never do any design work by ourselves. So we literally get together, we do all the design work, and then when we leave a session, we'll do like tasks that have to be done, like build a TTS mod or write the rules or whatever. But 100% of all design work is done together.
Cool.
Which means there's a lot of time spent together. I mean, I think I spend on average like 8 hours with Trevor a week. Right. So there's a lot of time together. There are other people that I work, like, for example, Dave Neal, who I did War Story, Occupied France with. We had, the way we designed that game was very different. We would come together, and I was largely responsible for like the tactical combat resolution and the overarching story, and Dave was actually doing the narrative writing. And so, I mean, we're not going to sit down and Dave start writing while I'm there.
And
that's
you just
ludicrous.
like watch him type.
Right, yeah. This is exciting. So, and similarly, Jeff Engelstein and I worked on Chung Ha with GMT, and that was that was more similar to the way I worked with Dave. So it was originally Jeff's idea, and he had some like initial concepts, and we actually did what I think a lot of co-designers do, where we would like one person would work on it for a while and kind of throw it over the fence, and the other person would work on it for a while. I'm not super good at that personally. That's just not my. I have a hard time. I don't know how to describe it. I have a harder time being like at one with the project if I'm doing that process. But so anyway, the answer to your question is it depends basically on the designer, not necessarily the game.
Right. It definitely makes perfect sense that if somebody's working on more of the narrative side, that's something, unless you're like, here's the general idea for the story, you think of that together, and then one person writes, because you're not, that makes perfect sense. So a lot of your games explore real world, like military history, like we've talked about, themes of conflict. What responsibilities do you feel as a designer when tackling these subjects? Because I know personally, like, Undaunted's one of my favorite games. And when I recommend it, there will be people who will say, oh, I don't know about war. Like, I'm not sure how I feel about the theme. So it can be a bit of a hurdle. So how does that work for you?
So again, kind of cliche, but it depends on the game. And what I mean by that is So there are certain games like Undaunted, which Undaunted, like I mentioned before, it is based on it was based on my grandfather's unit, and like the actual battles inspired some of the scenarios, but it's a very very like abstract representation, and it's not real people in the in the game, etc. And so in that case, it's a much I feel much more like able to take liberty, right, with the game design, and not be as concerned with the historical realities. Now that's very different when I'm doing a historical game that is like deeply tied in a historical topic. And a lot of the games that I work on are, right, they're focused on like real, actual, no kidding, down to the individual person level.
Right.
That's a very different situation, right? So first of all, the whole reason I'm designing those games to begin with is to pay respect to those people. Like that's the entire point of the game, is to like tell those people's story and pay respect to them. And so I try to be as respectful as I can to their their memory. And it's interesting. So there's actually been a couple of times where, like for instance, I was working on a game called Landsworth Ridge, and I was researching. It's about 20 guys, and so I was researching those individual people. And I'll go anywhere the research takes me. So I was on a Facebook group about the unit, and I was asking for, I think, pictures or something. And the lieutenant that was in charge of the group, his daughter was in that Facebook group. And she was like, I'm not sure my dad would have wanted a game to be made about this. And so I was like, whoa, okay. And so she and I had a talk, and but like, so we talked, and she was comfortable with it. But before we talked, after she had said that, but before we had talked about it, I was like, you know what? If she thinks he wouldn't be comfortable, I'm just not going to make the game, right? Like that, I can't move forward with this. That's not respectful to him. And then similarly, I'll make decisions. Like I had a game called Soldiers in Postmen's Uniforms, where it is a solo game. So oftentimes, one of the reasons that I will make a solo game is because I want to put the player in a very specific historical position, right?
Right.
And in that case, and sometimes I'll make like a 2-player variant or whatever, and so you can play the opponent. But in that case, you're playing Polish defenders during World War II, and you're being attacked by SS and some pretty horrible people. And I did not want to give the players agency to be those attackers doing the things that they were doing, right? Which in this case was literally burning people alive. And I was like, okay, I'm going to remove all ability for a player to have agency in that case. So it's those types of decisions really that go into it when I'm working on the game.
Yeah, and just
Good
kind of
choice.
taking the care, or even taking the feedback of that girl is like, oh, I don't think this would be very cool with this person that I know that was in this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like when you're doing that research, to hear back from like the real life people and real life families that sometimes we can disconnect ourselves from a little bit when thinking back to something that happened however many years ago. But interesting. Yeah. So we already kind of chatted about it a little bit. I know you're a fan of Final Girl, and the listeners would not forgive me if I didn't ask you some questions about Final Girl. Yeah. So I'm curious, how did you first discover the game, and do you have a favorite feature film?
So, okay, a few years ago, I was like, I'm going to play, because as we've talked about, I designed quite a few solo games. Yeah. I'm going to play all of the best, quote unquote, whatever that means, but I interpret it as like basically highest rated solo games. And so I played like Warp's Edge and Under Falling Skies, and I'd already played Friday. So I went through a lot of them. But of course, Final Girl, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think Final Girl is like the top rated solo only game there is. I might be wrong, but I think that might be true.
No, it's correct.
So,
You're correct.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to play Final Girl. Now, my daughter, she's now 14. This would have been, I don't know, she was probably 10 at the time, something like that, 11. I'm not sure. But we play a lot of stuff cooperatively, solo cooperatively, whatever you want to call it, like solo together. And so she loved it. Like she fell in love with it. I like Final Girl. Like I like it a lot. I'll play it anytime. She loves it. Like it's probably her favorite game. And so I was like, oh, well, I mean, once we discovered it, like we like there's times we'll play like 3 or 4, episodes of Final Girl in a single sitting. So we play a lot of Final Girl. So now in terms of like what's my favorite, okay. So this is a funny story. So when I was playing Maple Lane for the first time, and what's his
Dr. Fright.
Dr. Fright. We're playing Dr. Fright. And now one thing we do is I don't know that we've ever mixed the killer with we always just stick with the thing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
What?
So we were playing Dr. Fright for the very first time.
You're purist. I got it.
Mind blown.
Yep. But I was playing, we were playing it, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm doing his little mini game right. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I was frustrated. I was like, is this right? Is this really how it should be or whatever? And Michael Kelly from One Stop Co-op Shop?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He and Liz are both big fans of Final Girl. And when I was first getting into it, I talked to them a lot about it. And I'm good friends with Mike. And so I remember messaging them, and I was like, am I doing this right? And Mike was like, yeah, you're, whatever. I can't remember the exact thing, but like they had to like explain to me, and I was like, okay. So I went back and played it, and we since then it's always been like one of my favorites. So like learning how to do it right or making sure I was doing it right. I can't remember the specifics, but Dr. Fright's always stood out with like the little mini game. We always enjoy that. Mm-hmm. But I will say, and I'm not just saying this, like I knew that she was gonna like the Slayer, right? Because I mean the source material, the homage is my daughter's other passion, and so one of her many other passions, and so I mean I think it'll be another one we wind up playing a lot. So we'll see. But I will say, and I think you said this in the last episode, I will say that if we have been away from Final Girl for a while, we'll always go back to Happy Trails because it's like, I don't want to learn anything. I just want to play Final Girl. So
yeah. It's a classic. It is a cozy game
cozy,
for anybody out there listening. It is.
Right.
I will not be
cozy
challenged.
Final Girl.
Cozy Final Girl. Now,
cozy camp murdering.
You know what? Sometimes you just gotta have a little cozy camp murder. It's just
right.
It is the way it is.
That's right.
So, if you were given free reign to design a Final Girl feature film box from scratch, I always love asking people this question because everybody comes up with such great things. What would you do? What's the theme? What's the setting? What's the killer?
All right. So I'm going to pull the curtain back a little bit so that people I got the questions ahead of time, right? Yeah. Obviously. So I thought about this stuff, but let me tell you, I already had my answer to that question ready. I did not need to be asked the question. I already know the answer to this question.
I figured, yeah.
So have you seen Prey, the movie Prey?
I have not.
Okay, but you know the Predator movies, right?
Yes.
Yes, I've seen it.
So a couple of years ago, a movie came out in the Predator series called Prey. Now, I'm not a big Predator guy, right? Like, I saw the original Predator back in the 80s or whenever it was, and it's fine. I like it. It's good. I haven't seen the 14,000 other Predator movies that exist. I don't really care. So whatever it was about this movie, and this movie got like a lot of like positive, acclaim, whatever at the time. And so I watched it, and it's first of all, it's set in like the early 1700s, and it's about a predator that comes to like the Great Plains area, I think. And
like the American frontier.
You have the story of this Comanche girl who is going on like a quest to basically prove herself as a warrior. And so she's hunting what she thinks is a Comanche like mythological creature. And it turns out to be the predator. And it's just an awesome movie. It's an absolutely fantastic movie, like super highly recommended. But it would be about her. Like she would be the final girl, and this this predator would be the monster. So
love it. What do you think about that, Evan?
Well, probably one of the next feature films coming out in this next series is called The Volcar, and it's set in a jungle, so it more homages. It's not set in the 1700s in the Great Plains, and I love Prey. Yeah. Prey was amazing. I do also love the original Predator quite a bit. I think it is probably one of the best 80s action films. I mean, it's got like Jesse Ventura in it. It's got, I mean, it's such a great cast, and they're all chewing the scenery. Like every single one of them is just having a time with it. It's got great lines like "Get to the chopper." I mean, it's just perfect. So it's the location is called Pesadilla Verde, which translates into the Green Terror.
Okay.
And so the name of the box is the Green Terror, and it's my attempt to inject hidden movement into Final Girl.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So okay.
Which I think I did an okay job of.
I haven't played it, so I don't know.
It's very hitting movement in a solo game is.
It's a challenge.
Basically almost impossible but it's not entirely impossible, but within the limits of the Final Girl design space. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
that's
so
cool.
yes, so that is coming out in the at the location. All the victims are actually soldiers, and the soldiers acted kind of as allies, similar to if you've played The Killer from Tomorrow with the hunter at the Sunny Days Mall. I don't know if you played that one yet. Yep. But the Savior and then the Hunter Mark V, they become allies, and you can kind of give them actions and stuff to do. So all the soldiers have first of all, they don't want to leave because they're like all bro. They're like they're very, they want to fight, and so it's actually much harder to rescue them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But you can train them, and they get better and better, and so you can use them as you can coordinate them and have them trying to attack the Volcar who's running around the board completely hidden. So it's interesting.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. There's that line in the rule book that talks about when the victims, they won't leave on their own, right? And it's this this line in the rule book that's because they're stupid or brave or whatever. But now they're brave. Right. They're soldiers. They don't want to leave.
Right, they're very brave. Put me in, coach. I can take them.
Yeah, they're not always so brave. So, David, what's one piece of media, it could be a book, a film, a video game, that you would love to adapt into a board game that you haven't had a chance to do yet?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two, even though you asked for one, because I can't just do one. Okay.
Fair. I get it. Trust me.
Okay, so I'm a child. I'm 46. Yeah. So I'm a child of the 80s. So there's two IPs that are I would work on these for free. Okay. I'm not joking. I might pay to work on these. So one is, they're both the cartoons that I grew up on. One is G.I. Joe, the other is Transformers. So in the only actual Transformers movie, which was the animated movie from the 80s, the other ones don't count.
Yeah.
There's the beginning 30 minutes of it, which I've made my kids watch 100 times, where it's Optimus Prime is a badass and saves everybody, and then he dies, and to me that's the end of the movie. But there's that where the Decepticons attack the Autobot city on Earth. I would love for that to be a game, a tower defense game where you're the Autobots and you have to hold out until Optimus arrives, and then you get to lay waste to the Decepticons. So that would be my tower defense Transformers game. And then G.I. Joe, in addition, I never read the Transformer comics, but G.I. Joe, I watched the cartoons and read the comic books. And in the comics, there was a storyline where there was this place called Cobra Island where Cobra was, and you had different factions of Cobra fighting each other, and G.I. Joe had to help one of the factions. They were forced to help them. So it's almost I have this idea for a game that's almost like Super Coin Light, where you have a bunch of different asymmetric evil factions, and G.I. Joe has to team up with them, and they're all fighting against each other.
That'd be cool.
Those would be my two, absolute dream IPs.
Amazing. And you heard it here, folks. He's doing it for free. So,
hey, I promise you, give me the chance. I'll do it for free.
I love that. And another question that I love to ask, and then I got one more, and then we're going to go into the fun segment. You're stuck in a cabin for a week. You can only bring 3 board games. What do you bring? I'm gonna
assume that there's only a handful of people in the cabin, right? Because if there's a ton of people, we have to have some big Two Rooms in a Boom or Werewolf or something that we can play, right? But let's
Right.
just say we have a handful of people. So what I did was I picked games at different player counts with that group of people. So my 2-player game of choice is A Few Acres of Snow, which is one of my all-time favorite games, but it's also probably the single most influential game to me from like a design inspiration and philosophy perspective. So love it. Maria, which is maybe my favorite game. I don't know, but it's just absolutely brilliant. I mentioned earlier I don't like playing long games. Like usually if a game gets past to an hour and a half, I'm kind of done. Like 2 hours is like my upper limit usually. Maria is so brilliant that like, and it takes a while. It can take like 3 to 4 hours to play. It's one of those magic games that at the end of 4 hours, I'm like, oh, that was like a 30-minute game, right?
Right.
And 4 hours has passed because I was so in it. And then El Grande, which El Grande is like, I didn't come to El Grande. Well, I mean, as you know, I didn't even start playing games until El Grande had been way out. But I first played it maybe only like 5 years ago. And I played it, and I genuinely thought after playing it the first time, I was like, why didn't people just stop making games? Because the perfect game has been made. We don't need to make games anymore, right? So those are the 3 that I would take, and I would be ready for any player count.
That's amazing. I haven't played any of them.
So I think the one, I mean, Maria is like not something you're just going to slide into and play, but the one that you absolutely should play is El Grande. Like you should definitely play it.
And we do own A Few Acres of Snow. We actually bought a copy for us, and we got a copy for Rodney so that we could both have it. But it just hasn't hit the table yet. But that is one that like Jeff's been just dying to play. So
yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
All right, and before we get into a little bit of fun with Evan, I know you've got quite a few exciting projects kind of on the horizon. So we'd love to hear about them and kind of share them with the audience.
So I wrote these all, so I feel like a tool writing these down. And this is the issue, right? Because there's a lot of games that have been sitting, you all know how this is, right? You work, it feels like you do a whole bunch of design work, and the truth is you do like a game and that game comes out 1 year later, or you do a game and it comes out 5 years later, and they all hit at the same time.
Right.
And I tried to think like, how could I talk about this and not tick off a publisher because I didn't mention their game, right? So I'm just going to mention these super fast, and we can move on to something way more interesting. So, okay, Line of Fire Burnt Moon and General Orders Sengoku Jedi are essentially part of Undaunted and General Orders line. They're coming from Osprey. They're coming out this summer. Those are the imminent releases.
Perfect.
Night Witches and Queen of Spies are games that I'm working with Liz on. We've talked about them quite a bit, so I won't belabor it. Night Witches come out with Fort Circle. Queen of Spies is coming out with Salt and Pepper. Jung Ha I mentioned before, working with Jeff Engelstein. It's coming out from GMT. Aegea was just announced, coming out from Mighty Boards. I did that with Trevor and Brett, which was interesting because it was the first time I ever did a 3-person co-design, which is an interesting whole story on its own. Roger and I have Sniper Elite. The expansion was just announced, which is super cool. We worked on that a long time ago, so it's cool to see it coming out now. That'll be crowdfunding soon. War Chest, the new expansion's coming out from AEG soon. That's with Trevor. And then I'll mention this one just because this one is something I'm super passionate about. I'll give it a little bit more time. So I spent a lot of time recently working on a game called Rebels Against Rebellion. I never thought I would design an American Civil War game. It's not a topic that I'm really even comfortable with for a lot of personal reasons. But this is a game that takes place in Tennessee. It's about a county in Tennessee called Scott County. And when Tennessee seceded from the Union during the Civil War, this county within Tennessee seceded from Tennessee. So it's about the guerrilla warfare of those people holding out against the Confederate Army and Confederate-aligned guerrillas for a few years, waiting for the Union to come liberate them. And so that's not a story. The Loyalists or the Unionists, as they're called in the South, their story doesn't really get told much. Yeah. And so this game is really important to me just to kind of tell that story of those people. And that's coming out from Flying Pig.
Super interesting. Evan, you're in Tennessee.
I know, seeing as I live in Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's like super far, like East Tennessee was its own thing, especially at the time. There was a time when it was like Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee, East Tennessee. And East Tennessee was its own thing. very, very different from like socioeconomic perspective. And so it put those people in a very different position when Tennessee joined the Confederacy.
Very interesting. Cool. That's a lot of exciting stuff. I think I've heard about everything except for Rebels Against Rebellion. So now I know one more thing. All right, Evan, time for your fun.
All right. So this is a fun segment. I should probably give it a name. I can only do it with certain guests. They have to have a catalog rich enough to pull from to do this. But
Yes.
we'll see. This is your job, David, is to guess which of your games this sparkling review is from.
Okay.
So I've gathered some of your most colorful, entertaining, positive, I might add,
okay.
reviews.
Okay.
Of
So
your
these are
body of
real.
work.
These are real reviews.
These are real comments.
Can we just? I want to do the
About-
bad reviews. That would be much more entertaining.
Oh, I was being sarcastic. They're all bad.
Okay. Yes.
I was like, there's
Yes.
not a
Good.
chance that Evan
Way
knows
better
these
radio.
reviews.
Way better radio. All right. Let's go.
I'm glad that you feel that way because that's what gets. All right, so we'll see. I'll start out with some of the easier ones that I think reference what the game is a little more. All right.
Okay.
First comment. Played it 2 more times. I'm absolutely baffled that anyone finds any fun playing the Defenders. Really a head scratcher for me.
Oh, Sniper Elite. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You got that. All right. Okay, next one. That's 1 point. All they had to do was even have one male and acknowledge that they want to honor all people persecuted. I guess men are just not people, though, according to the game designers.
Now this is interesting because I would assume it's Night Witches, but there's no. I don't think there's any reviews for Night Witches, or if they're just like playtest reviews or something.
There's no comments for Night Witches.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. Okay.
Listen, I'm a man, and I feel offended that I'm not a person to you, David.
Yeah, David.
Okay. Read it again.
All they had to do was, okay, I took out one word that would have completely given this away.
Okay.
All they had to do was even have one male witch.
Yeah.
Oh,
Acknowledge
yeah.
that they
okay,
want to
okay,
honor
okay,
all people
okay,
persecuted.
Okay. You know what? This is okay. Yeah. That's fine. So one thing I should say for full disclosure. So obviously, witchcraft is based on. It's like a fictional setting, right? But it's
Yes.
clearly intended to convey the witch trials in both Salem and what was going on in Europe at the same time. We actually talked about including men because there were men who were persecuted during this period.
Right.
That's totally legitimate. And we thought it was important. There's a lot of games about guys, a lot, and we thought it was
don't
important to not introduce the issue in that regard. But hey, that's fine. That's okay.
It's okay. Men aren't people.
They're not
It's
people.
fine.
We're not
It's fine, David. Men aren't people.
I feel
Okay.
seen.
All right, next one. This one's a little long.
Oh, good.
This game is poor on so many levels, I barely know where to start. The production reeks of laziness. The player aids are lazy and nearly unusable. You will need to supply your own different colored dice to streamline the multiple dice rolls. The artwork on the board looks like it was expanded in size from a smaller board design and just exudes an amateur's effort. With obvious hyperbole, the list of wargame or wargame adjacent solitaire games I'd play over this one are endless.
I'm going to guess it's Castle Itter or Pavlov's House.
Well, you gotta pick.
Gotta pick one.
Gotta pick.
Castle Itter.
Nope, it's Pavlov's
Pavlov's
house.
Oh,
house.
so close.
So Pavlov's House. This is also. I feel like I'm not trying to defend these. I'm trying to explain them. So Pavlov's House was a funny case. I mean, the artwork, I did it, and it's clear that I did it. And when I pitched it to DVG, I thought like they would redo the artwork, and they're like, no, it's good. And so that's why it's horrible. It was never intended to be the final artwork.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. I love all these little stories behind. All right. This one. All right. The title alone is enough to get my eyes to droop.
Okay. Oh, man. That's the whole review?
That's the whole comment, yes.
The title alone. Maybe soldiers in postmen's uniforms? Maybe?
No, it's War Chest.
Oh. That's weird. Okay, all right.
All right, here, this next one, I'm hoping you can shed some light on since I didn't really understand it. But
Okay.
it was definitely a 1 review.
All right.
All hat, no cattle.
I have no idea. No clue.
What does that mean? Do you know what that means?
What that means? No clue.
This was
All
a
hat,
sick
no
burn, apparently.
Sick burn. It's not effective because I don't even understand the sick burn.
Okay, I don't either. All right.
Let's just say Undaunted Normandy.
It's Undaunted 2200.
Oh, man.
So close.
So close.
Makes it even more confusing with the cattle reference.
I know. I thought I was going to get a fun story like, oh yeah, there's cattle in the game and you put hats on in space.
Yeah,
and,
space cattle.
whatever, but no. Okay.
Oh.
All right. Next one. This feels like a shameless cash grab, as it is so bad and broken in comparison to its predecessor. I almost don't wish to sell it, as I don't wish to inflict the disappointment on some poor board game enthusiast. Now, this is hard. It's clearly an expansion, but you've designed a lot of expansions.
Yeah.
He's looking at the shelf.
He's just for our listeners.
Yeah.
David has turned around to look at his shelf so he can remember which games he's designed.
I'm looking for the cash grab. I'm gonna
Which is the
I'm gonna say Undaunted 2200 Callisto also. Is it possible that we have, or do you only take one from each game?
Oh yeah, no. I have multiples. in there.
Okay.
But this is Sniper Elite Eagle's Nest.
Oh, it's a cash grab. So it's funny because we designed all of the content for Sniper Elite was designed at one time. So that would mean you'd have to design the cash grab preemptively. Mm-hmm. But that's fine. That's fine. I mean,
It's fine.
You soulish, filthy rich, cash grabbing game designer. Just so our viewers know, David is literally sitting on a throne of gold.
I am Scrooge
that was built
McDuck.
on. He's just bathing in money while we're doing this podcast from all of his cash grabs.
I want one.
All right, here's the next one. How did this design get approved? Truly one of the worst games I have ever experienced.
Oh my god.
Worse even than Stegmeyer games, and that is quite a feat.
That's a double burn.
The guy.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's not done. It gets
good.
better. The guy I was playing with was also stunned at how bad it was. Caden, my little boy, got a massive headache about 3 turns in and actually started bleeding from the nose. So we had to stop and take him to the hospital. I know war games are blood and guts, but literally?
Oh my god.
You literally sent a man's child to the hospital with your game, David.
Aw. This has to be an Undaunted. This has to be Undaunted North Africa.
Nope, it's Undaunted Normandy.
Oh,
So
man.
close.
They're wrong.
Man.
So many Undaunteds.
that
All
is
right.
that.
Next
Those
one.
are the words of an angry Grognard. I can feel it. I can sense it.
Yep.
His little boy got a nosebleed from
he blamed
playing your
you for
game,
it.
and he had to take him to the hospital. Oh my gosh. All right. Dungeons and Dragons is a more realistic depiction of squad level combat.
Oh. I mean, it has to be another Undaunted, right? I'll say Undaunted Normandy.
No, this one's Undaunted Stalingrad.
Really? See, Undaunted
Yeah.
Stalingrad doesn't get a lot of negative stuff because it's such a what do you call it? Like a self-identifying audience, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't just pick up Undaunted Stalingrad, right? That's interesting. Okay.
Well, apparently Dungeons and Dragons is a better depiction of squad level combat.
I mean, if it's dungeon squad combat, it probably is.
All right. Boring. The most boring game I ever played. Really. Soldi specie malissimo, which is Italian, and I translated it, and it translates into money spent terribly.
By Stealth and Sea.
Yes! Good job.
Yes!
He's like, I've read that one before.
No, because it's about Italian human torpedo operators. So I assume that like an Italian person bought it hoping it was good, and it was boring.
An educated guess.
Yeah.
All right, we got 2 more. If I could, I would give it a -5. Only would play for my hubby's sake. But really, I would not.
I mean, it could be worse. It could be like a -10.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not bad.
It's a good scale.
Undaunted, Battle of Britain.
Pavlov's House.
It's a solo game. Why was she?
I know. Apparently, some guy out there forced his wife to play Pavlov's House with him.
Oh
my god.
Oh man, that's bad.
All right, here's the last one, and this is my favorite. I think you'll probably be able to guess it, but it's just very funny. I don't think this person is a native English speaker, but they wrote it in English. The color of the back of the coin is different. Lack of skills. You.
Yes. War chest. Yeah.
Yes, it's War Chest.
Oh my god.
And just so you know, he or she left that review on multiple War Chest entries, not just the main one.
That's hilarious. All for the back of the coin.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
You love to see it. I love people's dedication, honestly. Like, I've read some, like, Jeff and I did a video about reading, like, negative reviews of our favorite games. And somebody on Grand Austria Hotel, all they wrote was dumb baby game. It's my favorite thing ever. That somebody
dumb baby game.
I'm just like, people are hilarious when they hate things.
Like, it's a game for dumb babies? Or...
I don't know. All I know is that it's a dumb baby game, and from now on, for the rest of my life, I will call the Grand Austria Hotel a dumb baby game.
Dumb baby game. Oh, that's amazing.
I know. Well,
thank you for playing, David.
That was awesome. That was the best thing I've ever done in any podcast, video interview. That was amazing. That was glorious.
Yeah, we always love to, bring people back down after we've pumped them up during the interview section. Well, my friends, that is everything that we have for today's episode. We ended off with roasting David, which you love to see. But yeah, I just want to say a huge thanks to David for joining us. David, where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you got going on?
Well, you could go to Board Game Geek, and you can find me there. But when you go find me, go look at all of those amazing comments before you reach out to me and send me a geek mail. And then I guess probably Blue Sky is where I'm also active, and it's David Thompson at whatever the Blue Sky thing is.
Yes. Perfect. So we hope the listeners had a great time. As I always say, please feel free to join the Van Ryder Games Discord. We will be chatting about the episode in there and chatting about lots of other things like Final Girl and so much more. But thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back again next month. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.